Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I'm Vince Mickens with the Private Air Media Group. I say this every week, but I always have some really great guests on this show, and this show is no different. Actually, very much looking forward to the conversation and the diversity, not in the way you're probably thinking. It's the experience that the three of my three guests have that are very different. Two in terms of their wealth of knowledge in aviation, and the other who is an aspiring aviation professional who is just getting her career started. So we're gonna cover a lot of ground and talk about a lot of great things in terms of opportunities. As many of you may or may not know or have heard, opportunities abound in aviation and aerospace right now. There's just a lot going on, and it's continuing to grow. And now that we're putting the pandemic situation into our rear view mirror, it's just going to get better and better. And that's for pilots and for mechanics and technicians and crew and you name it. If it has something to do with aviation and aerospace, the opportunity is there. So if you're interested or you're already in it, there's a lot to look at. And what I hope for, and I always try to do with this show, is take people like my guests that are on and their experience to share with you, and also advise you on what they've been through and what you can do to further your career or to get started into an aviation and or aerospace career. So I have three incredible guests, as I mentioned, and I'll start with one who I am very honored and consider it a privilege to have her on the show, Olga Custodio. And Olga, I forgot to make sure I pronounced your last name correctly. I got the thumbs up. Okay. Olga, she has a lot of firsts. She's the first Latina to complete the United States Air Force undergraduate pilot training program. She's the first Latina commercial airline pilot who flew for American Airlines until retirement. And I could go on with the list, but I'll let her tell you some more of the firsts that she has. Olga has accumulated over 11,000 hours in her flying career. She's on the board of directors of the Latino Pilot Association, and she is originally from Puerto Rico. But what really jumped off her bio to me is that Olga has been married for 47 years. Since I'm coming up on 28, I'm all impressed and stuff. That's quite an accomplishment in itself. And while she was doing all these great things, she was raising a couple of kids and is now a proud grandmother. Olga, can I say the name of your grandson? Because I think it's really cool. Her grandson's name is Jedi. So I just got the biggest kick out of that. Okay, I cracked myself up.
Interject real quick. His full name is Jedi Griffin Justice.
Oh, wow. Well, you just took it to a whole nother level.
Right.
Olga, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. My next guest is another great example of someone who has carved their own career path from early on, like Olga, and is helping others set their course for success. Tammera Holmes is the president and CEO of AeroStar Avion Institute, as well as AeroStar Consulting Corporation, both out of my home state, Chicago, Illinois. Okay, hold on, everybody. I know everybody knows I grew up in St. Louis, but I was born in Springfield, Illinois, the land of Lincoln. So that's my home state. I'm going to claim it. Anyhow, Tammera got a degree in aviation management from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Go Salukis. And has had a 24-year career in aviation. Tammera, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Fine. I think I butchered your name a couple of times. It's Tammera, correct?
Tammera, like camera.
It's Tammera. So I had it right the first time. Okay. I hope I don't do that the rest of the show. Tammera, thank you for your patience in being part of the show. And then there's something that I like to do when I can, and that's have an aspiring young aviation professional who's right in the thick of elevating their career. And I have that opportunity with today's show by introducing Megan Cho. Megan is currently an instructor pilot. She also works with flight standards at the flight training department of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, where she graduated from in 2018 with a degree in aviation. And she is currently pursuing her master's in aeronautics, specializing in aviation safety and human factors. Megan is originally from Goyang, Korea, which is just outside of Seoul, Korea. And she has accumulated, just found out she had more hours than she thought she had. She just accumulated 1,800 of, she has over 1,800 flight hours. So she's doing her thing there at Embry-Riddle and making some noise, and we're real proud of that and glad to be able to have you on the show as well. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, really, with the two greatest women that I've seen in aviation today. So
yeah, so and you're a really good example. So I'm gonna actually start with you and ask you to tell us a little bit about your background, because you were born in Korea, you grew up there, but then you went to New Zealand. And so tell us about that, the growing up in Korea, going to New Zealand, and then eventually going back to Korea, and then eventually coming to Embry-Riddle.
Well, so my dad is an airline pilot. So growing up, I would just see him in pilot clothes all the time. He would always bring these airplane toys. Unfortunately, I mean, it's fortunately, but he has 3 daughters. I guess he wanted a son to follow his footpath. So he was always trying to inspire one of us to be in aviation. I guess that I was the one that actually got into it. But before that, the reason my parents had us move to New Zealand for 5 years is that they wanted us to like see the world, like the bigger world, that, you know, that we're not just stuck in Korea. There's like a whole new world out there, experience new things, open our minds up a little bit more. And then that's when I kind of decided, yeah, I mean, the world is great. And I've only been to like 2 countries. I want to see more. And my dad would be like, okay, that's great if you could be a pilot. So then we went back home, try to pursue the dream of pilot back home. It's just, it is unfortunate in Korea, the general aviation side, where trying to become a pilot is very limited and restricted unless you join the military. But I guess I wasn't brave enough to just sign a contract with the Air Force. And then my dad looked at more opportunities. Himself, he actually got all his training done in the U.S. as well, in Tennessee. So we started looking at flight schools in the U.S. and then that's how I ended up in Embry-Riddle.
When did the bug bite? When did you know you wanted to actually fly?
I think towards the end of middle school, because the way we have to choose high school is that it has to be a more like career specific. Like depending on which career that you want to pursue, you will go to different type of high schools.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had to like decide early on, and I'll be completely honest, I was very unsure that I wanted to be an aviation pilot or airline pilot, just because I've never seen a female pilot. My dad would bring all his colleagues, which were always men. And yeah. I was frankly the only girl like playing with an airplane toy, like growing up. So I just like, okay, do I have enough to go on, or is it just because my dad wants me to become a pilot? Which I found out later, I do have a huge passion. It wasn't found before.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue to Olga, because Olga, from a couple of perspectives, one, you and Olga were just talking about that pre-show, and also, Olga, you started in the military. You come from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and you went into the military. I think partially because of your father being in the Army, or you tell us.
That's correct, and thank you for having me today, and along with these 2 amazing ladies. It's an honor for me to be able to have this camaraderie, even though it's online, with ladies in aviation. It is very few opportunities that are out there for us to get together, and this is great, and I appreciate this. Well, as far as my career, my father was in the U.S. Army, and like Megan, I had the opportunity to live outside of country. And actually, I lived in Iran Taiwan and in South America before my father actually retired. But his military career really inspired me to military service. And that's how I started. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would ever be a pilot in the military. But that 10-year wait for me, it was 10 years, you know, when I started pursuing this, when I finally got the opportunity, was worth the wait. So by the time I tried my third time to get into the US Air Force, they were looking for female pilot candidates. And so, you know, the rest is
history. So I read something about in your bio that you weren't focused on the fact that you were the first in this and the first in that. It just kind of happened that way. It happened that way in the military. It happened that way with American Airlines, that you ended up being the first Latina. What was it like for you to discover that, hearing it probably from others, and how that affected your career?
Right. Well, I think the motivation when you start a profession or a career is you're focusing on that one thing, your profession and getting into it and the challenges and barriers that come with it. So you're so busy, you know, in the mix of trying to get ahead, that's the last thing on my mind was, you know, I knew the gender thing was one thing, but Hispanic, you know, being Hispanic, Latina was a totally other thing for me. And the way I grew up, I saw myself as an equal to everybody. You know, to me, I learned to respect other cultures, people, you know, languages. And I just felt that as long as I respect you, you should respect me. And that's how I pursued this, obviously with the support of my family. But the way I found out was I was the instructor to one of my first female students, and she had come from the Air Force Academy, and she's the one that told me, oh, I'm going to be the first Latina pilot for the Air Force. And I'm like, wait a minute, I think you're looking at her. so that's how I found out. You know, that was not on my mind to be first at anything. I was just pursuing a career, and the same at American Airlines. So
yeah. Tammera, you ended up studying aviation at SIU, Southern Illinois University. When did that get on your radar that aviation was going to be a career?
It was a Saturday morning, Young Eagles flight with the Tuskegee Airmen in Chicago. My mom made me go with her brother one morning with my little brothers and sisters, which as a 16-year-old was completely embarrassing to have to get up on a Saturday morning at like 8 a.m. to go anywhere with little kids. You know, I was way too cool for that. And sure enough, my uncle and aunt pulls up downtown, and I'm thinking, oh my God, we're about to go to the museum. This is going to be the most boring day ever. I got to be at the museum with chaperones and my little brothers and sister. And we turned to the right, and it was an airport. Now, I had been to the museums. I had spent time downtown. I had never seen an airport. So I was completely caught off guard by the fact that what was then Meigs Field was an airstrip in Lake Michigan. And we went in, I saw all of these Black guys giving airplane rides to kids. And they asked me if I wanted to take a ride. And I'm like, of course. And the pilot took me up and then asked me if I wanted to fly the plane. And I'm thinking, he does not know where I'm from and how much trouble we could get into up here. But I just said, absolutely. He gave me control of the airplane. We turned the plane around, and I was literally flying over Lake Michigan at 16 years old. It was a transforming experience. My dad did work for American.
Okay.
I grew up in Maywood, which is just south of O'Hare Airport. So we were in the line of traffic for one of the approaches for 32. And so I always saw the airport. I always saw airplanes, but it wasn't until that day that I knew, no, this was for me.
Yeah. So tell us about your career with that, because you kind of took a different path.
Tell me about it. I actually created a path. There was no path
That's my whole
after I
point. And that's
got
what's
to
great
a
about
certain
having you
point.
talk about this.
And fast forward to now, I started flight from 16 to 18. I did everything everybody told me that I should do, which was get good grades, stay out of trouble for the most part. And then you'll be able to get into a good college and go pursue your dreams. Well, nobody told me that they were having glider lessons, out at the airfield in Gary, or, I could get my pilot's license at 16. I just didn't know. So I waited until I could go to college and enrolled, and I was blindsided by the cost. I was blindsided by the lack of diversity. I was blindsided by the level of discrimination, sexism. All of the instructors were white males. All of the staff in the aviation department, except for maybe the secretary or the dean's secretaries, they were female. And out of 4 years, it was only 2 African-American girls in the aviation program, flight or management or maintenance. And so it was very heartbreaking for me to leave the flight program. I just could not afford to stay in the flight program at SIU. And I didn't want to be a pilot for a living. So it kind of made sense that I would just switch over to management. And it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. I wound up landing my dream job right after college for a global aviation consulting firm where I worked on airport planning projects, aviation consulting, airport construction, sustainability. And for 7 years, the last 7 years that I was there, I was the only African-American in the world on the team as a professional staff. There were other African-Americans, they were assistants, they were with Latino cleaning staff, support staff, but not professional services. And so when I realized that there was no pathway for me into the C-suite, I had a conversation with my boss, who was the vice president, and his boss, who was the president. And I told them, you need to contract with a minority and a woman-owned business, and I can create one for you. And that's what happened. I started AeroStar in 2008. And after doing aviation consulting for about 2 years, I put myself on maternity leave and never came off. I wound up just giving birth, not just to my own children, but to thousands of other aviation babies who are now pursuing careers in aviation and aerospace. I completely walked away from corporate. And then in 2018, I started a nonprofit specifically dedicated towards African Americans, Latinos, and young women who are interested in pursuing careers in aviation. And we started kindergarten.
Wow. And that's really great, though, for our viewers to hear about that. One of the points that I like to make is that, you never quite know what your path is going to be. Yes, you could desire to be a professional pilot, as we'll be talking to Megan about, who's on that track. But you can also create your own path or go another direction and still be in the industry. So it's clear that you still love aviation, but you chose not to become a professional pilot. Again, that was by choice. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that, before we start kind of talking about you guys' programs and things like that, I'd like to come back to Olga, because Olga, you alluded to some experiences that you've had and the challenges in the industry. And one of the things that is very clear to me overall is that the industry right now is about to have a growth spurt. It's right in the middle of it. It's post-pandemic, so to speak. But before the pandemic, we were looking at a pilot shortage, a mechanic shortage, and other aspects of the industry that have a need for people. And that is now coming back. And by next year, it's going to be full blown. And one of the ways to address that is diversifying, is expanding that pipeline to include women, to include people of color, from all cultures, et cetera, and so forth. And I'd love to hear all of your perspectives, starting with you, Olga.
No, absolutely. The Latino Pilots Association, which started in 2015, was to kind of have a presence in the aviation community. I mean, there was none. And these 5 pilots decided that they were going to do this, and thankful that they did. Since then, we've grown to about 600 members right now. And the focus is trying to inspire, like Tammera, the young students to look into aviation and aerospace as an option. There's so many different types of jobs and professions within the aviation and aerospace community and profession that we feel to expose these young kids that know nothing about it. You know, Megan, her father was a pilot. At least she was in that world and saw and experienced it. But there's a lot of young kids that know nothing about aviation and aerospace to even consider it as a profession. So in the Latino Pilots Association, we're trying to create these programs and initiatives to expose these underserved communities of young boys and girls into the aviation and aerospace, to just kind of get a glimpse of what this could be and what it's all about, just to spark that curiosity in them. We've partnered with several airlines that have supported us. JetBlue up in the New York area was in the works to sponsor a camp, and it's called ALAS, Academy for Latinos in Aviation Sciences. And it was going to be a week long, but then pandemic hit. Obviously, we've kind of pushed it to 2022. And it's a week long to take these kids who are interested to technical colleges, to get them flight simulators, talk about aircraft and power plants, workshops, and see what that would be like, visit the facilities, talk to flight attendants, maintenance, engineers, and TRACON, you know, the air traffic.
Is it going to be a summer program next year?
I think the time frame we're looking at is sometime in the spring, like spring break.
Okay, gotcha.
So something like that. So JetBlue is sponsoring that. Our other partner is United. We have just started this partnership, and they're offering, they gave us $600,000 to recommend the candidates for their new Aviate school. I think it's the only airline that has an aviation school right now, which just started up. And we've already sent 4 recommendations their way, and they're planning on training 100 students, pilots this year. And it's basically from 0 to hero. So, you know, from 0 hours all the way up. And
totally covering the cost.
Correct. They're totally covering the cost of the ground school, the flight school, their certificates, all of that. They're just responsible, you know, to room and board and finding, you know, to sustain themselves. So
I read that United allocated 1.2 million for this program and got matched by JP Morgan for another 1.2, so 2.4 million total to accommodate this program or get it started. That's pretty amazing. And as you know, as Megan brought up, and as everybody brings up, also Tammera brought up, it's the cost that usually deters a lot of people, even if they're really interested or passionate about it. You know, it's like, how do you pay for it? And then the reality check, and this has happened more than once to students, where they get to school in an aviation program and don't realize that the flight training portion of that is a whole nother budget. It's a whole nother cost factor, and that. So, and Tammera, you guys also have some partnerships, I think, with Boeing and the like. You want to tell us a little bit about your programs and what you're doing?
Sure. I first want to address the question about the pilot shortage and, you know, where we're headed, and diversity as being a solution. This is not new. The same thing happened during World War II, when all the able-bodied white males went off to fight and they ran out of a pipeline for pilots. Then the WASP were able to be a part of the service to the aviation efforts in the war. Women were then allowed to go in and work for companies like Boeing to help keep the war machine equipped with building airplanes. Women had never been able to have those jobs before. All of the well-able-bodied men, white males, were not available. And then the Tuskegee Airmen were called upon only after it was a last resort. And so one of the things that we want to do, and I know that that is the sentiments of, you know, my colleagues and our partners, why does diversity have to be a last resort? Why does inclusion have to be a way to save the industry or to save the efforts of the country when it comes to the economic viability of one of the greatest opportunities for individuals to have gainful employment, which is in transportation. And so AeroStar has done exactly what we have set out to do, which is to create an aviation talent pipeline project in partnership with the Boeing company. They've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into our organization over the last 5 years to start educating and training young people. We started in after school programs with our first program with 15 kids. We now do about 1,500 a year through programs and after school, out of school time learning. And our new push now is for CTE education, which is career and technical education at the high school level. State funding allows for kids to start studying career pathways in Illinois as early as 5th grade. So why aren't we using some of those pilot training dollars to start training pilots in 5th grade? You know, Megan was very clear that she decided in middle school that that was the pathway for her to go. And guess what? More than 80% of the people that's in the aviation industry, particularly pilots, made that decision as middle schoolers.
Right.
Before high school.
Very true.
And so one of our goals is to make sure that we're not, I don't have kids late to the game like I was, waiting to go to college, thinking that I have to be a college student and study aviation. No, we can go to our local airport. We can do things. We've been doing things like Olga's mentioned about the camp with JetBlue, the mentorship, the exposure, getting them out and about and around people who look like them, who come from where they come from. And the other thing that I'm doing now is I sit on a national task force for youth access to American jobs in aviation. I was appointed by the U.S. Secretary in 2019. One of 17 individuals in the United States of America to tackle this problem specifically with regard to the lack of youth engagement and matriculation of a pipeline into the aviation industry. So to Olga's point, you know, starting adults from zero to hero is great. You know, we should absolutely have those opportunities, but we can also create organic pipelines directly into the industry to create sustainability long-term, because what United is doing through the aviation program is answering the shortage right now, but that shortage is going to be exacerbated over the next 5 to 10 years as many airlines, as air travel begins to come back up and exceed pre-COVID numbers. As new airlines, especially regionals, begin to come on board. Breeze Airlines just got charter certification from the FAA last week. So there are a lot of opportunities in the industry. And Vince, you mentioned my last point, the other jobs. For every one pilot job, it's 99 other jobs out there in the industry.
Absolutely.
So AeroStar has become dedicated to servicing the youth, which means what are their needs? What are their interests? What is their aptitude? Because I'm not going to tell every kid that comes into the AeroStar program they can be a pilot. They can't, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, you know, you and Olga addressed some very important aspects of this. I want to switch to a little bit of a different perspective and talk to Megan. Megan, you and I were talking about something prior to going live that I think is really key and goes through the minds of a lot of you aspiring young aviation professionals. And that is, okay, in my case, I do want to be a professional pilot. The norm, based on, in your case, your dad, and then what we all hear is to go the airline route. But you also have been looking at other aspects of being a professional pilot, other areas, I should say. Can you tell us a little bit more of your thoughts about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, just most of the students that come to Riddle kind of started or made the decision that they want to be pilots because, like Tammera said, because of their parents. That decision is made in middle school. They're either their mom is an airline pilot or their dad is an Air Force pilot. So the only track that most students that actually do their training here, they're either want to be an airline pilot. I would say the majority of us want to be an airline pilot because it's just a set pathway. And a lot of airlines reach out to us and then offer these pathway programs, which is just easy for us to just transition to. And because growing up with an airline pilot dad, I really didn't know there are other options out there as a pilot, which is what I started to find out with a bunch of career expos that Embry-Riddle likes to host, and a lot of airlines also come, but there's a lot of corporates and like charter companies, even cargo companies come and reach out to us and give us these insights and opportunities. That's why how I found out, okay, you don't always have to be an airline pilot to be a pilot and make it your lifetime job. So I did start out, okay, I want to be an airline pilot, but now I'm starting to see, there's a lot more opportunities that I can do with cargo, with corporate, with charters. And frankly, I kind of wish I saw that a little bit sooner so that I could have reached out and started investigating in these fields a little bit sooner.
Not too late. It's not too late. In fact, you're right on time to tell you the truth, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. Because I was so mindset, like my goal was so set to, okay, airline pilot. I just need to get my hours, join this pathway program, and then I will be a regional pilot. But I guess you're right. It's not too late. Now I'm doing my research, and the more I do the research, there's a lot more stuff out there than just airline piloting. And Vince actually told me, like you said, there's a lot of cargo opportunities with the new airplane that Cessna is making. You said the air courier.
Sky Courier, yes.
Sky Courier, yeah.
Yeah.
Those
they partnered with the design of it with FedEx, and it's going to be a regional carrier, and it's going to, I hope I have my information correct, it's going to be single pilot certified. So a twin turboprop, single pilot certified, that's going to really be kind of go from a major hub to smaller regional hubs. Kind of the way they do with the Grand Caravan and that type of thing, is going to open up a lot of opportunities to young pilots like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, as an aspiring pilot, where I now have to determine what I want to do, because flight instructing is, a lot of people agree that it's a very temporary position. It's just like our platform to go on to a bigger field.
For most, yes.
Yeah, for most people.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to see all these opportunities opening up. It's just a great time.
Well, we talked about it earlier. You have 1,800 hours. You have your certified flight instructor and certified flight instructor instrument. That's for people watching that may not know all of the terminology. Right. You have your multi-engine, and there was a couple other ratings that you had too. Is it float plane seaplane?
No. I have a multi-engine, instructor, and then I recently got tailwheel endorsed.
Tail wheel. That's a good one.
Yeah. That's fun.
When did you get your tailwheel in? What aircraft?
Citabria. It was like a 1970 Citabria, and it was just for me going from flight training environment and I went to a very local private airport to a guy that I know. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Spruce Creek area, the flying community. So a bunch of pilots live there with their nice handy dandy airplanes, and then the
handy dandy airplanes.
The guy that I flew with, he had his whole life in aviation, air traffic control at some point, a pilot at some point, and it was just great. It's so different. Just step out of the school, and again, there's a whole new field of aviation out there. Again, that's what got to me. Okay, I don't really have to be a flight instructor for life. I don't really have to always work for a huge organization like an airline. I could do there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Yeah. Olga, Tammera, talk to this young lady. Tell her what you think.
Well, first of all, I got a question for you, and I've been itching to ask you if you've ever been interested in becoming an air race pilot.
Air race pilot.
Acrobatic?
Oh no, that takes I think a different kind of heart. I mean, I am always fascinated to watch these aerobatic flights. I just never had an experience yet, though. I would love
If
to
you're
try it out.
interested, let me know.
Okay,
I'm looking for a couple. So definitely let me know. And the other
definitely.
thing I want to just encourage you is an aviation career is long. We're in the industry for as long as Olga's been married. So, you know, it is a marriage for many of us that we actually go into the industry and we have fallen in love with it and we stay in it until after we retire from our 9 to 5. So
Mhm.
I don't think you have to choose every step of the way. You can continue to be open about what pulls on your heartstrings, what makes your brain tick. If you really love the teaching aspect of flight instruction, but not really being in the plane all the time, you might consider becoming a professor after you
Mhm.
get your master's, which is required to be a professor at a university. You would get hired right away to be an aviation professor, and then you can still flight instruct at other times. You can go into the airline side. They're always looking for different pilot jobs at the airlines, not just the flying job, but even at United, there are people with aviation background that's into airline management and actually running the airline from the pilot side. I know a couple of chief pilots for the airline that have actually stopped flying, and they actually do a lot of the training now for the airlines. And so you just want to be open. You know, I went from flying to noise abatement to construction to youth advocacy and now youth programming, education, and training. So it's really important that you stay open
Mhm.
and always be looking for other ways to get tools in your tool belt. And Olga can attest to this, and I know Vince can too. We in the industry outside of piloting look for other skill sets. What other skill sets do you have besides total time and ratings? You know, can you do coding? Can you do IT? Can you do public relations? Can you do you have a technical aspect of the industry? And I know that's one of the things that actually saved my career over and over again. When they decided to make cuts and let people go, they said, oh well, look at her, she has all of this other experience in different areas of aviation that can lend itself to, you know, her remaining useful to the company when people who were only pilots, and I hate to say that, you know, they will let go. And you kind of saw a lot of that happening during the COVID layoffs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good advice to always have a backup plan. I wanted to also hear from Olga. Olga, your perspective from what you've heard Megan talk about in terms of where she is with her career right now.
Right. Well, I am totally on board with Tammera because staying open to opportunities and being flexible is key because you never know when that opportunity is going to show up. So I know Megan, it sounds like you're a little upset that you had this path going and now you're like diverting from it and you're like questioning yourself. Don't do that. Like Tammera said, it's what pulls on your heartstring. It's what the opportunity in front of you is. So give yourself that opportunity. I mean, if that's something you want to look at, just go ahead and try it. There's nothing wrong with coming back into that plan A. I always told my kids, you have to have a plan A to have a plan B because you cannot start from nothing and just go. So you have to have some kind of foundation. And I think you're looking at the industry in the correct way, being curious about it, talking, networking, so important. You never know who you're talking to. And I always tell kids this, tell them what you want because you never know who you're talking to. You never know the opportunity that that person or they know someone that they could offer you. So I think, just staying open to the possibilities and opportunity is very,
Yeah.
very important.
Well, you guys have really covered that well. I want to throw something back in, and it's interesting that you brought it up, Tammera. But last week, I actually had three iconic air show aerobatic pilots on the show.
I saw that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Patty Wagstaff, I can't believe I was blanking.
I know.
Vicky Benzing, yeah, I know,
Yeah.
the most iconic of everybody, right? Patty Wagstaff, Vicky Benzing, and Anthony
Shingwa.
Shanuga. And that was
Yep.
really a nice, diverse look at women and a person of color in the aerobatics world, which is still, somewhat rare. So, but that's a show that you might want to take a look at if you haven't seen it, Megan, to give you a better idea of insight on that particular aspect of the career.
Aerobatic flying is the best, and so is formation. So I'm trying to stay relevant. I got my flight review done into general aviation, which is one of the parts of aviation that I really was never into. So I'm looking at that right now. And I just took my first formation flight in a Mooney. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's challenging, very challenging. You're constantly.
Even with after all your experience, Olga?
It's a little airplane. I think
you're just used to going fast.
More challenging than a 767 to me, at least. It's kind of going backwards. But yeah, I think it's challenging, and I only say that because it was my first flight. Once it's like muscle memory. Once you've done something, it slowly comes back to you, and everything's good. But it was a lot of fun. And so,
what Mooney aircraft were you flying?
It's E model.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you reflect back on your training from early when you were in the Air Force? Because you learned formation flying then.
Well, in this jet behind me, but that's totally different. So
yeah. Is that a T-38?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. So yeah. No, that's the best flying there is, but that's just me.
So Megan, did that open your eyes for a few things that we've been talking about?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna check out the aerobatics side. I mean, I feel like I was exposed to aviation a lot, but I just, talking to these ladies or talking to any aviation professional, it always like hits me like, okay, what I knew is like very limited, and there's like what I know is this much, and there's always like this much out there. And aerobatic is something that I guess wasn't in my pool. So again, I would try to expand it. I will give that a go, see how that goes.
Well,
yeah, I'd like to take advantage of having you, Tammera and Olga, on and ask both of you to tell a little bit about, you both have dealt with a lot of young people as either in the industry or just aspiring to get in. You've dealt with, middle school, high school, and college students. What are some of your thoughts about what you would share beyond what you've already talked about to inspire them with aviation and aerospace?
Well, I think if you will, Tammera, let me just jump in here. I think for these young students, opening their eyes to what aviation is all about. You talk about that Young Eagles flight that you took, Tammera, when you had never been to an airport. That is one of the things that exposes kids and opens their eyes. Not only the flying aviation is seeing the world from a different perspective. When you're up in the air, you look down and you see this vast land and country and world, and you're just one person, and the possibilities are incredible. So just opening their eyes, I think, for me is so satisfying. If we have a group and we reach one kid, I think we've done our job. But we want to reach more, and I think what Tammera's doing is amazing. In your area, there's so many nonprofits, and every nonprofit that has the initiative and the task and mission to inspire these young students, I think is fantastic. So the more, the better, because we can't cover everything. So we really need as many people out there inspiring.
Yeah, Tammera, tell us a little bit about your courses that you guys do. I believe they're STEM courses with the AeroStar Avion Institute.
Yep. So our earliest programs are K-4. Those are our Aero Sparks. So This is mostly about kite flying, vacation, trips to the airport with mom and dad, balloon thrust races, paper airplane contests, drawing competition, exposure, just making aviation relative to what a kid in kindergarten to fourth grade would be able to understand. When we get to fifth through eighth grade, that is STEM exploration. It's all about science, technology, engineering, and math, based on kids' core competencies in the classroom. So things that they're learning in class become directly relevant as a part of their aviation courses. And then at the high school level, this is where we get into, these are our apprenticeship programs. So that we have pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, and advanced apprenticeships. And the advanced apprenticeships actually are courses and classes and partnerships that lead directly to licensure and certification, even private pilot ground school, drone licensing, and aerospace engineering we just launched, and rocketry, and RC.
Oh, cool.
We've been flying RC aircraft and doing RC training and drone
Also
training
cool.
for 10 years.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I was just sitting here. I love rocketry and RC. So I think those are great for young people to start getting a feel for, the aerodynamics, et cetera.
But they play video games all the time. They already know how to fly drones. They already know how to use the flight simulators. They already know how to, we can get them RC training, but they can do that in simulation. And so that's where the high school programs really take shape, because that's the practical applications of skill building that they're able to translate directly into aviation careers.
Yeah. Olga, you speak to a lot of young groups and that type of thing. What kind of questions do they ask, and what do you tell them?
One of the questions that is always asked is, did you ever want to quit? And to me, my answer to me, quitting was not an option, because it took so long to get to where I was. I had to give it everything. If I was going to be out of the program, it's because I didn't cut the mustard. I didn't make it, but I was never quitting. So I always tell them that they can't have that on their mind. Well, if it doesn't work, I'm going to quit. So I just try and take that perspective out of their minds as soon as possible. So they have to, if they can't do it, so find plan B. There's always a plan B. You don't have to quit completely. So I think the other question is, what do I need? What skill sets do I need, or what should I look for or study in order to go into aviation? So obviously I'm a big STEM advocate, and the program you have, Tammera, is incredible. And I think
and we teach about you all the time. We have a module called History of Aviation and Minority and Female Contributions, and you are there, and you've been there since 2012, 2013. So
well, I appreciate that. But I think starting in kindergarten, and that's when you really get that in there. Like Megan, she grew up in that world, and it was always there, but she assumed that was normal. My kids, especially my daughter, thought every other mom was a pilot. So that's all she knew. And my kids aren't in aviation whatsoever, but they're into IT. So they're both, one's an analyst for oil and gas, and the other one does IT staffing, and now she's doing IT training and certification. So
hey, it's STEM.
They're in STEM, correct. So they found their own path. But I try to tell students that we all, first of all, need that courage. We all have courage. We just have to find it way inside and pull it out, and don't be afraid of change, because in order to be effective or gain something that they want, they're going to have to change, not only fit their mindset, but actually walking that path, so not being afraid. And they're their worst enemy. Self-doubt is the worst thing. And I try and tell them, push that aside and push through that. So how much of a role did your upbringing, Olga, play
how much of a role did your upbringing play in you being so determined and never letting anything keep you down?
Well, here are the tools that I, in retrospect, and I talk about this, look at how I was able to overcome the barriers and the challenges. First of all, moving every 3 years as a military brat helped me learn how to adapt. Starting from scratch, new friends, new school, everything, every single time. Every time we moved, we had to start over and over again. So adapting was one of the things I learned. The other thing, and I already mentioned that, is seeing the world, seeing different cultures, people, learning about respect, and having that self-confidence that I am an equal to everyone around me. So that's one thing that nobody really teaches and talks about. And I think it's important because we give them the tools. Hey, you can study this or look at this experience, but how do you get that confidence? Is try and know that your self-worth is just as important as anybody else's. And I think that's part of that psyche that we need to push and teach these young students.
Yeah,
So,
Tammera, you were forced to be reckoned with. And I'm sure you can piggyback off of what Olga just said. What about you in terms of your upbringing? What aspect of your upbringing made you so determined about doing what you've done and setting your own path and making it happen?
Well, probably my personality, which we're all born with, right? That led me. I've been a boss since I was born. And, my mother would say I've been telling everybody what to do since I could talk. So, I've always been a leader. So that always drove me to have a plan, to be decisive, to execute. But growing up impoverished was another driving force for me. I realized that I never wanted to be poor, and how I grew up, I never wanted my kids to experience that. So the fear of being poor superseded the fear of failure. Like I couldn't fail because I knew that I could never go back to living in the situation and under the circumstances that I grew up in. I'm also the third of 7 children. And at one point I was living in a 3-bedroom apartment with 13 people. So for us to be able to function and manage, there had to be unity, there had to be communication, there had to be someone to take charge and take the lead and make decisions. And I'd always found myself in that position amongst my siblings, but as well as a thought leader in the family with my parents. And so it was really, it's harder for me to work with individuals who are working on confidence, and I say that in a way because I can't speak from that level of understanding, right? Of I can't empathize, but I do know what helps me build confidence is actually going out there and not being afraid to make mistakes. And so my upbringing has taught me that even when I make mistakes and even when there's failure, that's just another opportunity to do something amazing. And so I've always had in my mind that I didn't lose, I just shifted. This door didn't close. It just led me in a different path and a different direction. And so I think resilience is something that I can teach. I don't really base it on confidence because I think confidence is something that you have to actually learn how to build from within. But resilience is something that you can teach because it directly relates to what people experienced that was personal to them and how they themselves were able to get themselves or through their own ingenuity and their thought processes onto a different or better pathway for positive results. So confidence is really my biggest thing in corporate was to take my confidence down, a lot. I had to learn humility. I never really had to learn confidence. So that was my big curve that I had to
sounds a little familiar. Anyhow, moving right along. Megan, as we kind of wrap up here, I really wanted to get your perspective on what you would advise to your peers who, other young ladies that are maybe interested in pursuing or currently pursuing the same path you are, with your background as a Korean, and all of that taken into consideration, and the challenges that may exist as a result of both your cultural background and you being a female in the industry. Just like to hear your advice and perspective.
I don't have much to offer as much as these two amazing ladies here, but I do want to tell them we are getting there. Just from where I started, I'm starting to see a lot more female presence in aviation, and especially just even at our school. I'm starting to see a lot more female students. I'm starting to see a lot of female instructors, a lot more than what I saw. So we are getting there. I don't think, because when I first started, I was also afraid with the fact that this is a very male dominance field. But I just want to let them hear that we, people like me, are still here. We can make it, and we are taking it over little by little, slowly, but we are making a presence. So I want them to not give up, pursue. If I can do it, I was just some Korean girl from a very small town, and I made it here by myself. Yes, with the help of my loving family, but if I can do it, I feel like anyone with the will to do it can do it.
I think that's so well said. Tammera, a closing comment?
I just want to say to Megan, you have everything to offer, as much and more than what we have. You are already on a pathway to living your dreams and pursuing your dreams, and don't think for 1 minute that we don't still have imposter syndrome, that we don't still feel unsure about decisions, that we still have to wake up every morning and when we're sad, when we're angry, when we're stressed, when we have anxiety, we still have to get up and move too. That stuff still happens to us. It happens to me. I won't speak for Olga, but just know that, you can have a backup plan that's in aviation. You don't have to have a backup plan that's just, starting a nail salon. Have a backup plan that's still in line with your passion and your goals and your dreams. You can do anything you want in the aviation industry, and if you ever need any motivation, you have two women right here and a man that is willing to go to bat for you every step of the way. And that's what mentoring is supposed to be. So if you don't have one, get one, and get one fast. And they don't have to look like you or come from where you come from. They understand that you need support. Some of my biggest advocates were white males, and if it were not for them, I would not be in the position that I am in today.
Absolutely. Olga, how about you take us home?
Absolutely. My only mentors were white males, only. There was no one that looked like me at all. So I had to advocate for myself. And that's something that I think Tammera has done. And Megan, you have done that also. But as a mentor, Megan, I think you are exactly the right person, especially in the environment that you're at right now at school, because as you're seeing these young girls come into the aviation program, they're going to look up to you, believe it or not, because they want to be where you are right now and then continue. Absolutely. They're going to be watching you. So feel like you have a lot to contribute. I know you're still finding your own path and trying to figure things out, but that's okay. I know Tammera reinvented herself. She made her company, her nonprofit. She did a lot of things, but sometimes, the invention comes out of necessity, and we kind of grab at what's out there and what can I do with this? There's not a day that goes by that I'm like, how can I make an impact? What am I not doing? And I keep looking for those opportunities. So it's every day, and like Tammera says, we have to get up every day. It doesn't matter how you feel, you have your job and as
your kids and your husband.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And the beat goes on. And I have 3 daughters, so I know what you guys are talking about.
I think, Vince, what you're doing, I commend you for getting the word out there. These are platforms that are much needed, and we need to spread the word. And like like we've said, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think we have a great representation of our panel today. And I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies. It's been a real pleasure having you all on the show. Once again, we have Olga Custodio, again, a former airline pilot and Air Force pilot, and now she's flying formation stuff in Moonies. That's pretty cool. And a very active board member for the Latino Pilots Association, and all of the things that the association is doing to get young people into aviation and aerospace. Also, Tammera, thank you very much. I know you have a really tight schedule, so
they already calling.
Put some extra time on for us, but it was really great to have your input. And it's great what you're doing there in Chicago with the AeroStar Avion Institute and all the things that you do for the young people. And Megan, can't say enough about you in terms of what you've accomplished to date, what you're currently doing. And I couldn't agree more with Olga and Tammera that you are currently a role model, whether you know it or not. And people are looking up to you, and they're looking at you as a success in where you are, and you're just getting started. So wishing you the very best with your career. And as Tammera and Olga mentioned, anything that you need from any of us, we are more than happy to help you and to reach out on your behalf and that type of thing. So without further ado, so Tammera can get going and Olga can go jump in a Moonie, and you can go teach somebody. You guys take care and have a good one. We'll see everybody next week.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, take care.